Hi everyone. If you want to use the chat and say your name and where you're from, that would be great. Hi. Make sure you use the chat, introduce yourself. Hi Marina. Hi Wayne. I'm Rachel. I'm Claudia. Hi Geraldine. Hi Lorna. Hi Belinda. Hi David. Hi Jules and Martin. We'll just wait a couple of minutes and then we'll make a start. Those who've just joined in, just make sure you introduce yourself in the chat. Hi Maria. Hi Makiko. Hi Lisa. Hi Maria. It's great that we've got people from different countries as well, so that's fantastic, not only from England, so that's great. Hi. We'll just wait a bit and then we'll make a start. No pressure, Maria, but thank you very much for the feedback. That's really nice of you. Hi, Lindsay. Just wait another 30 seconds and then we'll make a start. Okay. Hi, everyone. And I hope you're all having a really nice afternoon. Here it's very sunny and blue sky in Lancashire, which is really nice. Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Jennifer Wozniak-Rush and I'm assistant head teacher for teaching and learning. I teach French at Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4, and I teach Spanish at Key Stage 3. And I teach in a school in East Lancashire. So my session is about Let's Talk. So I'm going to present to you some activities that I do to motivate my students to speak as much as possible in my lessons. Before I start, thank you for everyone who are putting comments in the chat. But can I ask you, if you've got some specific question as we go along during the session, could I please ask you to put your questions in a Q&A? So if you got the top of your screen, there's just a little icon that says Q&A. So any questions, if you can just put them here, it's a lot easier for me to have a look at the end of my session, because on the chat, there's so many comments. I would not want to miss any of your questions. Also, just to let you know, is that I'll make that presentation available to you at the end if you wish to have a copy. So let's talk. Why did I pick that topic this afternoon? Well, we all know that a language is meant to be spoken, and we all want our students to be able to communicate and to feel confident at having a go and at speaking in a different language. And personally, and I know that it's the same for you, but I really work really hard on building an environment where my students feel, safe and confident to take risk. And obviously the aim is to build their confidence in speaking. So first thing I want to talk to you about is talking about the student talk versus the teacher talk. So my first question to you is, who speaks the most target language in your lessons? Is it you or is it your students? Okay. And then the second question really is, are you happy with that? Or would you like it in a different way? So for example, if you think that you speak more in the target language than your students, would you like your students to speak more in the target language? I know for me personally, I would want my students to speak even more. They speak a bit in the target language, but I want them to speak even more. And obviously, speaking skills can only be enhanced if students are given, adequate opportunities to speak. And I really love that quote from Barnes in Teaching Modern Foreign Languages in secondary school, when he says that watching expert acrobats does not lead to the audience performing somersaults, and even if they might be able to recognize one. So it's not because we can recognize one that we are able to do it. And I think, to me, it's exactly the same with speaking. How can we make sure that our students can communicate as much as possible in the target language? So really, to me, it's starting from day one. It is crucial that students learn to produce new sounds as accurately as possible. So developing speaking goes hand in hand with listening. Speaking and listening, are two skills that obviously go together. So I always start each lesson with all my classes from year 7 to year 11 with a speaking activity. So I might begin with a very brief, low-pressure speaking activity every day. But as students become almost accustomed to this ritual, they'll feel more comfortable with the expectation of speaking every day, even if it's short and even if it's low risk. But it's just to build that confidence again. So in my classroom, I really try to create opportunities so pupils speak and ask in the target language. And I'm trying to build confidence in their speaking. So I teach pupils all the interaction language that they need. So, I will teach them how to ask for a pen, how to ask for paper, if they want to be a volunteer, if they need to go to the toilet, if they need to take their jumper off, because I know those are more likely the things that they might need to say. So right from day one, in year 7, we teach those structures. But I think I've put as my second bullet point consistency, because to me, consistency is key. So if you expect students to say certain things in the target language, then don't let them say those things in English. And it can be so easy sometimes to, someone is said, oh, miss, can I have a piece of paper? To just give that piece of paper. But actually, if we know that they know how to say it in the target language, why should we not ask them? So I've still got students asking me for things in English, and I said, I always say en français or en espagnol. And if they forget, if they've got some bits missing in the sentences, then it's an opportunity for the whole class to help as well. But it needs to be built up by us, and we have to create opportunities for pupils to speak and make them realize that they can actually do things in the target language. So really, surrounding students with the sounds of the target language as much as possible works for my classes. And you might disagree, you might think it doesn't work for yours, which is absolutely fine. But just for that, in this session, I will just share what I do with my classes that do work. Now, if you're asking me, do your students only speak French or Spanish, throughout the full lesson? No, there are some bits in English, okay? But they are, really using more and more target language. And I think this is something that is, that is key, for me. Because then they're confident to speak, they're confident to have a go. And obviously, it's a great, a language, we know that the language is meant to be spoken. So I use gestures and obviously visual support and students, because obviously sometimes they will remember how to say something with one of the actions that we might do. So I try to do that just to help the students until they become more confident in their own communication skills. And I'm going to share as well some routines that I do with my students and how I build on those routines. So let's start. As soon as pupils comes into the room, I make them speak. And I put them almost in a French mode or the Spanish mode. So for example, when the students come in, I'm greeting them obviously at the door, and I've got a mini whiteboard with me. And on that mini whiteboard, I might either have a topic, or I might have for example, I might have written positive opinions or negative opinions, or I might just have put connectives, or I might have put a verb conjugated in the past tense. And as the students come in, I just show them my board when I say bonjour or hola, and it just has to say something that relates to my board. So for example, if on my board I have positive opinions, when they come in, some will say génial, très bien, passionnant, agréable, and so on. But it means that from the second they enter my classroom, they start obviously speaking in French or in Spanish. So it puts them in that mode, which I think is important. As well, when I do the register, I'm sure it's the same for you. It is compulsory to do the register. We have to do it in every single lesson, and we have to do it at the beginning of the lesson. So I use it as an opportunity for everyone to say something in the target language. So for example, I might have the students to just give me a word in French, or I might ask them to give me a word from a specific topic, and probably a topic that we've learned previously. I might ask them to give me an opinion. I might ask them to give me a verb either in a past, present, or future tense. Sometimes I will ask them to give me a word with 3 syllables, 2 syllables, or things like that. Or I might ask them to give me a word that starts with either, and you can pick any letters that you want. Or I might ask them to give me a word that starts with the last letter of the previous word said. So if, for example, Anna is the first on my register, and she will say a word, then the person after will have to say a word, but starting with the last word, with the last letter of the previous word. So same thing, you just make them listen. With my Key Stage 4, what I sometimes do, not all the time, but sometimes, I will ask them the first person to give me a sentence, just a sentence, but then we're telling a story. So when the person one has said a sentence, then the next person has to say another sentence, but linked to what has been said. And at the end of the register, we've got, a story. So it's loads of different ways. Obviously, when I just ask them to give me a word, it's that quick, and I do the register quite quickly. With my Key Stage 4 classes, when I move to the story, obviously my classes are smaller in Key Stage 4. So, once in a while, I ask them to, instead of just give me something specific, they can just give me anything, and we just tell a little story. So obviously, it's just an opportunity for them as well, right at the beginning, to put them in that mode. I use routines to really encourage the students to speak. So in all my lessons from year 7 to year 11, I always do the greetings routine. And I just wanted to show you how I extend it so that the language becomes more and more complex. So I will just to show you some example, okay? So that's the first thing that I start with, you know, at the beginning of year 7. So I introduce, you know, comment ça va? And then, so I introduce, you know, ça va très bien, ça va comme ci, comme ça ne va pas, okay? And then when they start to be really confident with that language, when it becomes second nature, I moved to that. So I ask them how they are, they give me an answer, but then I want them to give me a reason for it. Okay, why? Why are they just okay? Why are they not well? Why are they really well? Okay, so same thing, I'm just building the language here. Okay, then when they are even more confident, with it, I will start hiding some of the words. And also, as you can see, I'm adding some link words as well, okay? Things such as, you know, also, but, however, on the other hand. And I'll start, you know, hiding some of the words. So same thing, they've got a bit of the sentence, but it's just like trying to remove, you know, some of the support. Then, after that, I add some past tense. And I have not yet introduced the past tense explicitly with my classes, but they use it here with the greetings. So then when later on I will teach the past tense, I can start making some links with the greetings, because they will know those things, like just they will know it, you know, it just becomes like second nature. So then when I move to, you know, later on to a topic, or even, you know, here to teaching the past tense, I'll be able to make some links with the greetings, okay? So then to add some complexity, students then ask each other how they are doing. So they just do it as a you know, a pairwork activity. But then I will ask some students to tell me what their partner said. So they need obviously to change the subject pronoun to he or she, making it more complicated, and obviously it does make them practice the grammar. So obviously they'll have to, you know, instead of saying je suis en forme, they will have to say il est en forme. Or instead of saying, you know, obviously je suis fatigué, il est fatigué, or elle est fatiguée. So it's just making them same thing, manipulating the grammar on something that they do as a routine, that they feel confident doing. And as I said, obviously, I just build that up over time. So maybe some of you might say, well, for which year group do you do that? Then it really depends on the classes, because if I go back to my previous slides, my year 7s now, so we are on half term 2, they're already on that, because they are so good and we've done so much work on it since the beginning of September that they are already on there. So it's not that prescriptive in terms of you must spend 3 lessons on that or you must spend 5 lessons on that. It's not that at all. It's really, you know, when you know your class better than anyone else. And also some classes might struggle a bit more than others, or some might just get it and might use the language so well from the beginning. But it's just making sure that you bring some complexity and you use maybe those routines as an opportunity for them to speak and using the language. Okay. Then I just present it as well in a different way, adding more connectives and also sentences that the students might want to use. Here, living in Lancashire, the kids are either fan of Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool. So, and the boys, they want to say that, every Monday morning, they want to comment on the football scores and the match that they watched last night. So I use it as a great opportunity to also, introduce some vocab. And most of the time as well, what is happening is that, the kids will put their hand up and they will just say, Madame, comment dit-on? So how do you say? And tell me something that they want to, to say. So let's say they said, I don't know, I don't know, I threw up last, at the weekend, I wasn't well. Well, I will introduce that vocab with them. We will drill it, we will repeat it. But then what I'll do is that I will incorporate that vocab in my routine for the next lessons. And the kids feels very proud because they know it came from them. And also it does stimulate them and encourage them to to speak and having things to say. Okay. Here other example with more vocab and also moving again with more complex structures such as I do not want to, or I want to, or things like that. So and again then just changing the comment ça va with comment tu te sens aujourd'hui. So always involving and making sure that I don't always use the same routine. There's really a progression within the routine. And what we've done on our schemes of work, we've got our schemes of work, but we've also incorporating the progression in terms of the interaction language that we use with our classrooms. So you can see from year 7 to year 9, the progression it is having just to ensure consistency across the department. So really increasing the number of opportunities for students to speak in pairs or in groups is really important. And obviously identifying, key phrases that you will always use when addressing, the students in the target language. So in my class, for example, I make my students do a lot of pair work activities. They do an awful lot of pair work activities just to practice the language that I might have introduced. And after each pair work activity, I ask my students how their partner was. Okay, so same thing. The purpose to use the target, the purpose obviously is to use the target language, and also, the students always have something to say, and they like actually commenting on the performance of their partner on each other. And again here, I'm going to show you, how I use the same routine and just add language so it becomes more complex. So for example here, so if French is not your main language, so it says, how was your partner? I think that my partner was, so, fantastic, excellent, very good, okay, bad, very bad, okay. And again, when they're really, confident with that, I will add some reasons for it. So what are the reasons? Well, my partner is intelligent, it was clear, it wasn't clear, my partner is cool, things like that. So very basics to start with. I can see that someone is raising their hand. If you've just got a question, if you could put it in the Q&A, and I'll make sure that I'll spend some time at the end answering that question. Thank you very much. Then, I will add more reasons, and I will start, hiding some of the words, okay? And same thing here, I'll start also putting some negatives, because I know that in French, it's something that they sometimes struggle where to put, the ne pas in a sentence. So it's a great opportunity here as well to use it. So yes, they do it automatically and systematically, but then when I teach any topic or any grammar, if they make any mistakes, I will always refer to the routines. I will say, oh, but remember, when we talk about I was your partner, how do you say my partner was not, is not cool, or, and they will say it automatically. So I said, okay, look at the pattern. So what is it going to be here? So obviously it works well to make some links about obviously your content language and your interaction language. I introduce even more complex structure here, as as you can see. Then hiding some of the words, and more again, as you can see. you know, and so on. And then I've moved, you know, as your partner, you know, learned, you know, in this, you know, when doing that pair work activity. So same thing, we just obviously build that on over time. And don't try to move too quickly as well, because if you move too quickly, they'll never be able to, you know, use the language accurately. And also in French, I mean, I can tell you now, everything is so complicated to say, you know, the était au pluriel is hard because obviously there's so many, you know, silent letters, you know, obviously the plural, we never say the S at the end in French, you know, loads of things like that. So it's a great way as well to keep practicing that all the time and, you know, throughout your lessons. And then again, I get rid of some of the vocab by just leaving the first letter of some of the words and introduce even more. So like, for example, my year 10, we've done the topic of family, personality, describing your friends, and so on. And obviously, as part of that, I've introduced, you know, the verb s'entendre and se disputer, so to argue and to get on well. And they know how to conjugate it. So obviously we've done it within the topic of family, but what is key for me, I want them to reuse those structures all the time, because if they use it, then for their exam, for their, you know, when they will sit their GCSE, you know, it will be, je m'entends bien, je me dispute, you know, is one of the complex structure. So here using it when they do, when they comment on each other, right at the end of the lesson is just, again, a great opportunity for them just to practice those structures, and then it becomes just second nature. And also, I reuse the content language with the interaction language. So when learning adjectives to describe, you know, personality, then I make the pupils use those adjectives when commenting on their pair work. And the idea is also for students to reuse vocabulary and grammar structures, like, for example, the comparatives in different contexts, and not only, you know, with the topic that we are studying at the moment, okay? To the point where obviously the students at some point do not need any support and can just comment using a range of different structures, a range of different vocab, and so on. So as I said, you know, you just start very small, very easy, and you build it up. But obviously the first slide is the slides that I start with year 7, and in year 11 they don't need anything, but it's just take the time, and obviously, you know, you just adapt it according to your class. So as mentioned, you know, I plan for a lot of pair work activities in my lesson. So for example, ping pong, so the students, you know, bat words backwards and forwards to each other, miming, you know, a game or of table tennis. So they, you know, I use it to obviously revise sequences of words, or to revise vocabulary covered in the previous lesson, and things like that. The language auction, so the talking auctions, for example, that I do as a pair work activities. So in pairs, you know, the students exchange as many words as they can on the topic. So you ask which pair can recall the greatest number of words. So they will all work in twos, and they will just brainstorm as many words or as many structures as you want for one specific topic. They make a little note of how many, you know, they've got, and then, you know, so like who's got 5, who's got 10, you know, and so on, before, you know, you challenge the pair who claim to remember the most to repeat them to the rest of the group. So same thing, then it's really key to complete and to ask then some students to feedback to you. So some students, you know, like to talk more than others. So I think also, you know, you learn from experience, and it's important to monitor paired and group interactions and gently, you know, intervene when it seems that one person may be dominating, you know, the conversation. So, you know, when they do the pair work activity, I always go around the room and I might intervene if I see that, you know, there's someone really dominating the conversation and so on. Really give support is key to make sure that you plan and you give your students the language they need to be able, obviously, to communicate in the target language. So teaching structures for students to use the language during lessons activity is really key. So like, depending on the activities that you're going to do, it's really important that you teach them how to say, it's your turn, or you're cheating, or I don't understand. When I play, when I ask them to do activities with dice, well, as soon as you play with dice, at some point there's a die who's going to end up on the floor. Well, it's happening. It doesn't only happen in my lesson, it happens in every single lesson. So make sure that you tell them how to say the word for a die and little things like that. So making sure that obviously you give them the keys and the vocab that they need. But then when you hear the students using the language, then praise them and make a big deal of it, because then they will want to say even more. And I always try to make the speaking in the target language, fun and really worth doing. And at the same time, obviously, we need to structure and plan our speaking task that they obviously really linked with, with the listening. So obviously, it's really key to work on the spontaneity, but sometimes, we need to think, how would you start, and making sure that you start small, because less is, we keep saying, less is more, but that is, completely right. So like, for example, as I said to you, recently I've asked one of my class to practice some speaking activities using snakes and ladders, but I had them use that from my screen on the board. So they had their snakes and ladders activity in front of them. They were practicing some speaking activities. There was like a teacher in each group with, some of the answers, so they could obviously check the accuracy of what was being said. But on my screen on the board, I had, the interaction language that they might have needed. So really, to encourage, the students to speak, there are also some activities that you can plan. Here is about prediction. And I watched a webinar a few years ago from Greg Horton. And Greg Horton just actually talked about that. And since then, I've been using it, and it's working so well. So it's about Greg Horton in his session, he was talking about group talk. And since then, I use it in different ways in my classroom. So like, for example, on the slide, you can have different people, different photos of celebrities, and ask pupils to guess how old they are. And then, obviously your students will speak in a target language, predicting how old they are. Or I also use it, saying, oh, which pet do you think they've got, or things like that. And I'll just put some interaction language on the slide so the pupils can agree or disagree. And obviously, that is a nice way as well, just to encourage them to give their just their opinions. Another activity would be to use Chindogu. I don't know if you've heard of it, but you show your students images just like that. So if you just type, Chindogu on Google, there are loads of different examples. So here are 4 examples on the slide, and what I do is that I put them on my whiteboard, and I tell the students to work in pairs to rank the inventions according to what they like the most or the least, almost like in a Diamond 9 activity. But when the students do that, they should be, really encouraged to use the target language exclusively when discussing it. So like, for example, if they don't know the French, the German, the Spanish, whatever language you are teaching, make sure that, they say, how do you say, so comment dit-on, comment se dit, and so on, that they use that, and really encourage them to use the target language as much as possible by either, I don't know if you use, a competition, or if you've got house points, or I don't know what your reward system is in your school, but I use the competition quite often in my lesson, and every time they use sentences using interaction language, I will give them some points for their for their team. And obviously, once they've ranked what they think is the best invention out of those 4, I will ask students, for example, to make comparisons. So like, what have you chosen? Why? We think that, and things like that. And obviously, depending on the ability of the group, it may be necessary to give them like a prompt or some key vocabulary, like I've done with the snakes and ladders. You might want to give them some vocab just to help them structure their spoken answers. But then, and then to move on, you could ask the students to, like, for example, like to give you a description of the invention of their favorite item, and you could point out that although they may not know what to call the object in the target language, most of the gadgets relate to everyday activities. So they will be using that kind of activity. They will be using like keywords that they've learned and that they've used all the time. And you can also, challenge them to come up with some other useful high frequency phrases. And you might want to write them on the board, before they start, on the task. But at this stage, try to get them to do as much as possible without using dictionary. The aim is to show them how much they can do with the words they know. And I'm sure you will agree, most of the time, the kids will ask you, Miss, how do you say whatever? And then, so like, for example, if they say, how do you say to swim? And if they don't know nager, okay, well, you might guide them to ask them, like faire de la natation, things that they know. So don't necessarily give them the answers, but sometimes guide them by saying, yeah, but how would you say that? And then it means exactly the same, and you know how to do it. So just for them as well to make some links and to build their confidence. Other example, this is an example that I saw at a webinar maybe like 6, 7, 8 years ago. It's an example from Rachel Oak's activity. And what I do here to make the students speak is that I put a sentence in the middle of the screen. So like, for example, here, je fais de l'équitation. And the students, so number 1, so they've got six things to do. They need to ask a question about that. They need to, give an exclamation about that. They need to add a positive opinion. Then they need to add a negative opinion. Then they need to put that sentence in the future tense. And then number 6, they need to put that sentence in the past tense. So same thing, just to encourage, the speaking. This activity that I do as well at the beginning of a lesson. So I do that with my Key Stage 4, my Year 10 class. So I'll have, 6 questions on the board. I've just got then little boxes with just a bit of words just to prompt their memory about what they could include. And I make them speak for 30 seconds. Do not start too high. A minute is a long time for students to speak in target language if they've never done it before. So start like saying, answering a question just for like 15 seconds, then 25, then 30 seconds. And then you will see that at the end, they can speak for like 2 minutes, but because you've built that confidence over time. And here as well, make sure as well when you do those activities, I don't know if some of you were in my previous sessions this afternoon about retrieval, interleaving and spacing, but when you do those kind of speaking activities, what is key is to make sure that when you ask one student to answer a question and to speak, well, you can easily have 31 other students in the room just waiting and not doing anything. And you do not want that to happen because, as I said, the speaking and the listening go hand to hand. So if you use mini whiteboards in your lesson, make sure that when you ask someone, parle-moi de ta famille, then all the others listen carefully, and on their mini whiteboard, they must write in English any information that they've understood. And to challenge them as well, I said to them, if you've spotted any mistakes, either grammatical mistakes or mistakes in the pronunciation, then make a note. And then when the person has finished speaking, I will ask the class, okay, who can give me some information? What did, that person, say? Has anyone spotted any mistakes? And we just work on it. But then it means that everyone is involved. Here I use exactly, it's the same principle. You just load, I do that at Key Stage 4 just to practice, for the speaking and to make them confident. Just got a list of questions, and I change the questions all the time, and I just ask the students, to give me an answer. But again, always making sure that the rest of the class is listening. Here for this one, they would be, so the kids will have little cards. It's again an activity from Rachel Oakes, and these would be cut up into individual cards for a short speaking line activity. So the way you do it, the learners ask and answer the questions and then move on to the next person. But they can answer, also, for themselves if they want. So if they don't want to pretend to be that person on the card, they can also give their own answers. But then what is key as well is just to make sure that they comment on each other, using the target language. So, you might want to teach them saying, sans ça, so, or things like that. So here is also another activity, from Rachel Oakes as well. So here the kids just roll the die, and if they land on number 5, for example, obviously it's the topic of holidays. So I want them to talk about the topic of holidays for a certain amount of time. And so on. So it's just to encourage, obviously, the speaking. Here, tell the story. So I will just add any words that you want on the wheel, just like the one on the slide. And what I'll do is that I'll ask the students just to tell me a story about it, and they can all create their own story, just to encourage some speaking as well. And something here as well, if you teach mixed ability, well, you know that some students, their sentences will be quite simple, but others might be more complex. And you can also challenge your students saying, who, with, how was it, and things like that, so they can add more details. Speed dating as well. I do, speed dating, and we just put, like I've done that with my year 7 in September. So we were doing some speed dating, and it was bonjour, comment ça va, blah, 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 comment t'appelles-tu, je m'appelle whatsoever, et toi, and so on. So, loads of different ways, obviously, to practice the speaking. So you can, they can give an answer in so many words. So you ask them a question, and they need to give you an answer using only 10 words or 8 words, or, things like that. That's exactly the same activity, but obviously in Spanish. Here as well, the students have 60 seconds to list as many words or sentences as they can from a current topics. Or what you can do as well, you give students a sentence and ask them to come up with as many variations as possible. So, it could be je joue au golf avec ma sœur, je joue au rugby avec mon frère, and so on. Just again to practice the vocab. Same thing, you give the student a word, and how many sentences can they make with that word. I use Jigsaw reading as well quite a lot. So my student A got one text, student B got another text, but they've got different gaps. And obviously they need to read the activity, and the others needs to complete. So obviously that jigsaw reading is helping them, you know, speaking in the target language. As homework, I ask the students, I do that in Key Stage 4, and I will ask them to, you know, to give me, I will give them a question, and they will need to prepare it and to record it and send it to me. And then I can give them all individually some feedback on their pronunciation, on the quality of their answers. And I use Vocary. It's so easy to use. You go on the website, you just press record, and that's all recorded, for you. And then you can transfer it as a QR code and just give it to your students. So I think really what is really important to think about is like, what cannot be planned by the students can actually be planned by you. And you can always provide those opportunities for spontaneity. And yes, we want the students to be completely spontaneous without our help, but I think we need to be realistic as well. And with year 7 to start, you know, small and to create those opportunities, so so our students become more spontaneous. So I'm really sorry I had to speak really fast. And I know I've got only 1 minute left, and I do have a few questions in the chat. So the first one is, do you see pupils of similar level next to each other for speaking activity, or do you prefer mixed ability pairing? I do mixed ability pairing, but what I do is that I will have, so obviously all my Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4 classes are mixed ability. But what I tend to do is I tend to have a really high attainer students next to like a middle high. Then I tend to have a middle low next to a low. So they can support each other, but the gap is not as big. So that's the way I do it. I'm so sorry because I know that I need to almost finish, and I've got a few more questions to answer. If it's okay, if you've got more questions, please email me, and I will get back. I will get back to you. I've also put a QR code. If you just take a photo of it, that will give you a copy of that presentation if you want. I'm really sorry I had to to rush, but I hope you took some ideas from it. And as I said, if you've got any questions, just feel free to email me or tweet me, and I will get back to you. But thank you very much. I hope you find it useful. Have a lovely afternoon and a lovely Sunday evening. Thank you, everyone.